Okay, let's just dive right in. We've all been there, right? Stuck in some conference room, maybe you're surrounded by sticky notes, and everyone's trying to force that big breakthrough idea. But what if that whole process, the thing we call brainstorming, what if it's the very reason our best ideas never even get a chance? I know it's a bold question, but it's one we absolutely have to ask. We treat brainstorming like it's this sacred cow of innovation, but the evidence, well, it suggests it might be doing a lot more harm than good. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why it fails, and then explore a powerful, systematic alternative that, actually works. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It comes from Genrich Altschuler, an engineer who spent his entire life studying the patterns of invention. He saw that the randomness of brainstorming wasn't some kind of cool feature, it was a fundamental flaw. It actually leads us further away from a real solution, not closer to one. So why does this process, which starts with such good intentions, just fall apart so often? Let's get into the psychology of it, because that's really where the problems begin. Yeah, does this slide look a little too familiar? These are just minor annoyances. They're actual cognitive traps. What we call groupthink is really something called anchoring bias, where the very first idea that gets thrown out there just drags the whole conversation down that one path. Fear of judgment? That's a valuation apprehension, and it's why people censor your own brilliant, maybe slightly weird ideas. And unequal participation? Well, that leads to social loafing, where some people just check out because a couple of loud voices are dominating everything. It's a perfect recipe for mediocre ideas. But here's the real kicker. Brainstorming didn't come out of some rigorous scientific lab or engineering discipline. Nope, it was invented in the 1950s for an ad agency. Its whole philosophy is just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope something sticks. It has absolutely no structured, repeatable foundation for genuine problem solving. There's a scientific term for what's really going on here. It's called psychological inertia. And basically, it just means our brains are wired to be a little lazy and follow familiar paths. When we face a new problem, we automatically default to the solutions we already know. The chaos of brainstorming actually encourages us to stay in those comfy, uncreative ruts instead of forcing us to break out of them. And look, this isn't just a theory. The data on this is just overwhelming. A huge analysis published in the Harvard Business Review looked at 60 years of research. We're talking more than 800 teams, and found that group brainstorming doesn't just fail to help, it often means you get fewer ideas than if those same people had just worked by themselves. Think about that. Okay, so if brainstorming is just fundamentally broken, what's the fix? The answer isn't to just try harder with a broken tool. It's about getting a better system entirely. So let's see what that alternative looks like. So meet TRIZ. It's an acronym, and it stands for the Theory of Inventive Problem Solving. And unlike brainstorming's whole random idea generation thing, TRIZ is a systematic, logic-based way to innovate that's built on a mountain of data. The backstory of TRIZ is just incredible. Starting way back in 1946, Genrich Altschuler and his team started analyzing patents. Not just a few, not a few hundred. Eventually, they analyzed over 2 million of them. And they weren't looking for unique ideas. They were looking for repeatable patterns, universal principles that solved the toughest problems over and over again across every single industry you can imagine. All right, this is the most important part. Brainstorming just creates this big cloud of random ideas. TRIZ, on the other hand, it zeroes in on the very heart of any tough problem, what it calls the contradiction. So what's a contradiction? It's simple. It's when you want to improve one thing, but doing that makes something else worse. Think about your phone. You want a huge, beautiful screen, but you also want it to be small enough to fit in your pocket. That's a classic contradiction. The process itself is just brilliantly logical. Let's stick with our phone example. Step 1, identify the problem. You want a bigger screen, but a smaller phone. Step 2, you formulate that as a specific TRIZ contradiction, which might be something like area of a stationary object versus usability. Step 3, you use the TRIZ toolkit, which is built from all that patent research, to find the universal principles that have solved this exact type of contradiction before. The principles might point to things like segmentation or nesting. And then, step 4, you adapt those principles to your problem, and boom, you get the idea for a foldable screen. See? No randomness. Just a logical path, straight to an inventive solution. Now, this all sounds fantastic in theory, but does it actually perform better in the real world? Well, let's take a look at the data from a head-to-head study. So in this experiment, they gave different teams the exact same problem to solve, but had them use different methods. The number you really want to pay attention to is individual ideation productivity. That's just a fancy way of saying the number of good, viable ideas each person came up with per hour. It's a straight-up measure of creative efficiency. And wow, just look at this chart. The traditional brainstorming group produced less than half a decent idea per person per hour. The TRIZ group, they generated over 2 ideas per person per hour. That is a productivity jump of over 400%. The structure of TRIZ doesn't just work a little better, it completely crushes the chaos of the old way. But that huge 400% increase isn't just about cranking out more ideas. It's about a fundamental shift in thinking that helps you generate better ideas, breakthrough ideas. It's about changing how we look at problems in the first place. So here it is. The brainstorming mindset just accepts the contradiction and then looks for a compromise. It says, okay, fine, we'll make the phone screen a little bigger and just hope people are okay with it being clunky. It's a trade-off. But the TRIZ mindset, it refuses to compromise. It asks, how can we get a giant screen and a small device at the same time? It looks to completely eliminate the contradiction. And that is where real breakthroughs, like the folding phone, actually come from. So let's boil it all down. What are the big takeaways here? First, traditional brainstorming is just fundamentally flawed because our own psychology, biases like anchoring and social loafing, gets in the way. Second, TRIZ offers a powerful, structured, and data-proven alternative. And most importantly, when we shift our focus away from just generating random ideas and towards systematically resolving contradictions, we can finally move past those weak compromises and create real innovation. And that really leads to this profound insight. That conflict, that contradiction we've been talking about, it isn't the obstacle to being creative. It's the starting point. It's the engine that, when you approach it with the right system, actually unlocks the path to a breakthrough. So I'll leave you with this one question. Think about the biggest challenge you're facing right now, maybe in your work, maybe in your life. What is the core contradiction that's holding you back? Because identifying that contradiction, well, that's not just an exercise. It's the first real step to your next big breakthrough.